I think I know everybody. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Ryan, for getting this all set up for us. On behalf of the New York Conference Global Church Commission, I want to welcome all of you to this conversation that we've arranged with two of our mission co-worker partners. Our commission is tasked with helping to keep New York UCC and Disciples of Christ congregations and members informed and educated about the joint work of global ministries globally, and find ways that we can all learn more and become involved. When possible, we offer congregations and communities the opportunity to hear from mission co-workers when they're home on leave or after their service. And we plan mission trips to learn more and to strengthen ties with global partners, maybe even providing a little hands-on help if appropriate. Well, a year ago in March, we were expecting to welcome 3 mission co-workers to visit and itinerate around the conference. Well, unfortunately, as you all know, the pandemic hit, and these visits had to be canceled. In fact, even on a couple days' notice for one person. And we're really hoping that in-person visits will resume soon. But in the meantime, we're delighted that 2 of our partners, the Reverend Phyllis and Rachel Paulette, could join us today as part of our New York Conference annual meeting. And they're going to share with us about their ministries and what's happening in their locales. First, I just want to give a brief introduction of each of them, but I know that maybe they'll want to add to that and say a little more about themselves than I know. And then after I introduce them, they'll each have about 15 minutes or so to just share a little bit about their ministries and what's happening in their locations. And then after I think we're going to just hold all the questions and conversations till the both of them have spoken. So if a question comes up, just sort of jot it down or try to remember it so that when we go to the question and answer portion, you'll have some questions. So first I want to introduce the Reverend Phyllis Bird. She was formerly a New Yorker, and she's been serving in Kenya, I just found out, for 30 years, where she's has married and lives with her family there. I suspect that some of you already do know her. She has itinerated in New York in the past, and currently she works in Kenya, but also throughout the continent of Africa with the Organization of African Instituted Churches as director of the Just Communities program. And she'll be telling us more about this program, but it helps members work toward good governance, poverty eradication, just environment, and creating communities in which the people of God can live with dignity. And I sort of was struck by that last, creating communities in which the people of God can live with dignity. It kind of tied into the keynote speaker's talk last night when he talked about the beloved community, and that's something churches should always be striving for, to create beloved community wherever they are. And then we have Rachel Paulette, who's a native of Canada and a trained social worker. And she's been serving not, I think, a year or two, but she'll correct, 2 years. Okay. And she's from Canada and a trained social worker. And she serves with United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands as assistant director of the Pringle Home for Children in Jamaica, which provides a safe, healthy, loving, and spiritually nurturing home for girls between the ages of 8 and 18. In addition to providing practical assistance and day-to-day support to the overall functioning of the home, she provides basic counseling and helps establish programs that will contribute to the care, protection, rehabilitation, and development of the girls in order to enable them to achieve a higher level of social functioning. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and we're really happy that you could be with us, Rachel. And she's the mission co-worker connected with our conference that we have not met in person yet. So we look forward to what you have to tell us today.
Sure. So I'm going to just prepare to share my screen. I've just prepared a little overview of the United Church in Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and how I'm involved, but I think the nitty-gritty and the good stuff will come with your questions. So hopefully this sparks a few questions along the way. So I have the privilege of being part of the team at Congo Home for Children, which is part of the United Church in Jamaica, Cayman Islands. The UCJCI's vision is to touch lives, nurture disciples, and seek transformation through Christ. And their mission is for all people to invite, encourage, and help everyone to become disciples of Christ while seeking at all times to meet their needs. The way that the United Church in Jamaica and Cayman Islands does that is very diverse. So they have a number of subsidiaries which make up the International Caribbean University of the Caribbean. They have after-school programs for children and youth, adult education, training, and literacy programs, senior programs and care, including a residential facility for seniors who need that extra love and support. They have counseling centers and programs across the islands, radio ministries, and local congregational ministries that are really engaged and focused on meeting local needs of their parishioners, as well as the communities in which they are located. One fun fact about Jamaica is that it has the most churches per capita in the world and has for decades. So the ways that churches are engaging in the community and the really creative ideas that they have are something that we have tons to learn from. But where I really have the opportunity to get engaged as somebody with a social work background is with the children's homes that UCJCI operates. So the United Church in Jamaica and Cayman Islands has two homes, Mount Olivet Boys Home and Congo Home for Children. This is Mount Olivet Boys Home. It's an older photo, so you'll see an updated one coming soon. It's been in operation since 1967 and gets its name from the community in which it is. So it's located mid-island. It's in Manchester, which is the parish, which is like a state that's yellow, kind of more central to the island there. Boys who come to live at Mount Olivet do so as placement from the Child Protection and Family Services Agency in Jamaica. It would be following a court decision or investigation with the decision that the child is in need of care and protection. What this means practically is that the boys' histories are such that they've lost one or more parents, they've experienced abuse or neglect, or a guardian simply wasn't able to provide physically or financially for them, hence them coming to Mount Olivet. At the moment, there's 40 boys living at Mount Olivet Boys Home between the ages of 8 and 17, plus an additional 8 young men in the pre-independent facility. In terms of children's homes across the island, Mount Olivet is unique in that once children turn 18, usually they'd phase out of the programming. But in the case where the young men don't have a family support network that can really mentor them and counsel them into young adulthood, there's the opportunity for them to continue with work life, vocational training, or continued education on site. And this is something that's being further developed. So this is the updated photo. So as you can see, it's quite a bit has changed. So now there is a sports field, arena, and stage, as well as this new building on the right-hand side. So this new building is over a decade in the making, and ground was broken 3 years ago. They're hoping that the younger boys will move into this facility hopefully next month. And the top level is for visitors. So if a missions trip is planned, they've created space to facilitate that. The old buildings will be used to expand not only on-site vocational skills training, but also the pre-independent facility. This was a long-term partnership with Johan Blake, who's an Olympian, who's taken a real vested interest in supporting UCJCI, but especially Mount Olivet Boys Home. For the most part, Mount Olivet finds creative means of meeting its day-to-day needs. So the top right photo is rainwater catchment. There's also a lot of agriculture that's done to meet their day-to-day food needs in partnership with a number of local and international organizations. A large chunk of the budget does come from the government, so there's a subvention for each boy monthly. And then the remainder, besides these two channels, would come from donations from the United Church in Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and the kindness of individuals, public and private donors, local and international partners, including global ministries and child sponsorship. Mount Olivet's mission is to provide a loving, safe, nurturing environment where the boys' physical, spiritual, and emotional and intellectual needs are being met to maximize their potential and their contribution to society. It's a team of 16 persons. Mr. Newman is the director and Ms. Kimberly Elliott is the assistant director. They're overseen by the Synod via an elected board of directors, and schooling is offered off-site. That's the same at Pringle Home. But on-site, the programming that we offer includes educational, recreational, vocational, and worship opportunities. Pringle Home is where I am part of the life of the girls and the staff team. It is almost 100 years old. So it started in 1922 with Reverend and Mrs. McNee and their daughter Kathy. It's located in a rural farming community called Karen Hall in St. Mary, about 541 meters above sea level. And it got its name through the donation to start the construction of the building of Dr. John Pringle. So 100 years of ministry means that we have a ton of success stories of staff and girls, as well as some challenges related to the infrastructure. So if you ask the director, she will tell you about girls that she now works with side by side as colleagues after them completing university and becoming professionals across the island and abroad. But she'd also tell you that the biggest challenge we face is a 100-year-old building. Similar to Mount Olivet, girls that come to live with us at Pringle Home for Children do so from the Child and Family Services Agency, which means that girls come to us as survivors, having been identified as being in need of care and protection. They are also tremendous musicians and have really impressive school accolades. So for the last 2 years, we've had head girls at their high schools, senior prefects, math whizzes, spelling bee champions. We have girls that dream of being international artists, actresses, dancers, track and field superstars, police, doctors, psychologists, all the sorts. But because of their past, Pringle Home serves as a ministry of the church, as a place where girls are invited into relationship, into healing and wholeness with God, their fullest potential, and with others. We're licensed to accommodate 36 girls, but those infrastructural needs means that we're not quite able to reach that capacity. Right now, we have 19 girls between the ages of 9 and 16. but we're licensed for as young as 4. We don't at the moment have the pre-independent facilities. That's something we really love to be able to offer in future, and in light of the learning and the expertise of Mount Olivet. Something that does make Pringle Home unique is that girls constantly come and join us, but also in as many situations as possible are reunited with family. So this picture is a little testimony of that. It's a happy and sad photo. It is this one beautiful young 8-year-old girl who lost both of her parents tragically. We're saying goodbye to her because she's got a foster to an adoption opportunity. And another young girl here, 9 years old, was being reunited with her family, her father and her brother. Her brother was in Mount Olivet and she was with us. And through the support of Child and Family Services and the church, they were able to be reunited after about 1.5 years apart. This is made possible through Pringle's unique vision and mission. So its vision is to transform the lives of hurting children in a safe and secure family-oriented environment where faith in God is developed and hope is restored. Its mission is to provide a loving and nurturing residential atmosphere where hurts are healed and hope is nurtured so that girls who call Pringle home may maximize their potential and fulfill their purposes. Our staff team is 15. The director is Mrs. Jeanette Rose Bryan, who is the lady on the left in this photo. We're also overseen by a board of directors and the synod. And then the remaining staff team are house mothers and other caregivers who are employed to nurture and ensure the well-being of the girls. And it's in the spirit of partnership, of resource and personnel sharing between Global Ministries and UCJCI that Global Ministries responded to a request for assistance in hiring an assistant director. And that's when I was able to apply and compete for the opportunity to join the staff team. That was 5 years after my first application and communicated interest and many trainings with Global Ministry. So Pringle Home's intention is to facilitate the holistic development of all children who join us, but what does this mean in practical terms? Well, academic and vocational skills are a real top priority at Pringle Home. So all girls at the home must attend school, whether Karen Hall Primary, which is the bottom left photo, or Karen Hall High, which is the bottom right photo. And the top photo is a picture from my office window of the school and the church that the girls attend. So school is walking distance. It's pretty much the only thing in the community besides homes and Pringle Home. So it's a very rural community. And then since COVID, school has transitioned to being on site. So the top left photo is our dining hall turned all ages classroom, facilitated by a donation from Child and Protection Services. They gave us the flat screen that we were able to use to continue with the girls' education. The top right is us trying to make excellent use of the resources that we have in our on-site library. And then the girls really, they catch the vision of the value of education. And so that bottom left photo is the girls reenacting a very famous game show in Jamaica. Friday nights are spent watching this competition of the top schools and students in the schools competing. So we would learn throughout the week, and then Fridays the girls would host this big game show production to review everything that we had learned and studied. It was like everywhere else in the world trying to play catch up with schooling and really being innovative in the meantime. But in the end, Global Ministries was the answer to our prayers. So schools closed in March of 2020, and in December of 2020, Global Ministries approved a grant through child sponsorship that Pringle Home was able to purchase enough tablets that every girl who joins us is able to log in online the girls once again blew us away. They not only caught up in everything they had missed during that time, but excelled and once again come out at the top of their classes. So there's a lot to celebrate, but also a lot of gratitude for people that support global ministries and was able to make this possible for the girls. Before and after COVID, after school programming is a big focus for us. We have tutoring, after school homework help, and remedial literacy for the girls who need, whether that's numeracy or written literacy. And then we've been able to launch an incentivized reading program so that the girls are able to earn stars, which they can trade in to buy really beautiful school supplies that have been donated to us. And once again, that's local and abroad donations. The top girls are in the top photo, kind of naming out their favorite books as part of that program when we launched it. Recreation is also part of the day-to-day life at Pringle. So Johan Blank, the Olympian that has done a ton of work to support Mount Olivet, also visited us at Pringle Home and constructed this ball court on the right-hand side photo, as well as a little playground facility for the girls. They make excellent use of that. And then we were also able to do facilitated recreation and exercise programs with the donation of the flat screen TV since COVID. So this is something that I shyfully debated if I was going to do with the girls, and they've run with it. So this photo on the left is their favorite Zumba instructor named Tanju. Zumba is a big thing at Pringle. The girls can be outside on the playfield and hear the song and do all the moves perfectly without seeing the TV. What I thought was going to be half an hour in the morning before we started classes just to get the jitters out has turned into exercise 3 times a day. So the girls really have reminded me that recreation and fun is an essential part of self-care. The girls play and can teach you a ton about play if you want to come and mutually learn from each other. So we do arts and craft, weekly movie nights. We don't have cable or internet at Pringle, but weekly movie nights are a big highlight of the week, Friday nights. We have games. The girls facilitate sports days, ring games, group games, and then the bottom right photo is a fashion show. So every opportunity that we have for karaoke or fashion shows or Jamaica's Got Talent in lieu of America's Got Talent or any other kind of group facility to showcase the girls' talents. We do morning daily devotionals, daily meditations, and contemplative exercises. The girls attend Karen Hall United Church, which is walking distance, and the girls are really excited about when they get to participate in music ministry and youth fellowship. So once a month when church was on, the girls would lead the service, and we have some snippets of them practicing for their music ministry on the Global Ministries website if you'd like to hear the girls. But because of the girls' past and our intentional effort to be part of the girls' healing process, psychological care is really an essential part of life at Pringle. So we have daily psychosocial wrap sessions, basic counseling on site, as well as support from doctors and nurses through child guidance. The support through global ministries and especially child sponsorship is something that's allowed us to get those really professional and high quality appointments for the girls through child guidance. And then the Children and Family Services Agency has a regional clinical psychologist that comes to the home every other week and offers group and individual counseling sessions too. And then last but not least, filling up all that extra time of civic holidays, summer holidays, and for instance, Christmas, Easter holidays with camps. And this has been probably one of the most valuable things, if you ask a girl at Pringle, that she gets to be a part of and her experience of the church. So some girls who come to Pringle have previous experience with church, and some girls, this is entirely new. But one of the biggest highlights for all girls when you ask them about church is the summer camps, the day trips. And this is the last day trip that we were able to go on before COVID. So I think probably one of the biggest things I've learned since being at Pringle Home is how much it takes a village to raise children. So I'm not yet a mother myself, but seeing the way that the church and other organizations, both from within Jamaica, the Caribbean, and abroad, have invested in the girls and caught the vision of being part of a time of a girl's life when she really needs that support. And the same goes at Mount Olivet. They've done a fantastic job of rallying the community, the global community. But I would be remiss if I didn't extend a very big, warm Pringle Home thank you for the ways that the New York Conference and Global Ministries is able to be part of the life and the work that God is doing through the United Church in Jamaica and Cayman Islands, and with the church in Jamaica and Cayman Islands. So thank you so much. I look forward to all of your questions.
So now we're going to listen to Phyllis Bird, who I hope is still with us. She was having a little trouble with her internet. Oh, there she is. Okay, so Phyllis, you're up.
Okay, I mute myself. I did that. And just give me 1 second. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope I'm heard well. Can you hear me? Very good. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. It's actually 8:32 in the evening in Kenya. So for me, that's pretty late because I tend to go to bed early and get up early as well. I think Kay has told you a lot about me, so I don't think it's any need for me to go over what she said. I was born and raised in New York City. I'm a member of Hollis Avenue United Church of Christ. I'm a mother of 6 children, the youngest being just started university, but because of COVID, she's back here in Kenya with me, and it's good to have her back. I keep teasing her, saying, why don't she allow me to homeschool her for university? And she says, Mom, no way. But it's a pleasure having her with me, although it's because of COVID. As Kay shared with you, I work with the Organization of African Instituted Churches. For those of you who are not aware of what that is, it's an organization that works with African independent churches. I know that this is probably a repeat for some of you who already know me and know what I do, but for the sake of those who don't, I'd like to go over it. Mainline churches came to Africa and they started mainline denominations, Methodist, Anglican, Presbyterian, etc. But yet they also, some Africans wanted to be authentically African, and the mainline churches wanted them to be authentically mainline churches, which is synonymous as being Western. And the African independent churches, or many Africans across the continent of Africa, felt that they wanted to be authentically African. And what does it mean to be mainline church or like a mainline church? Some of the ways is that ecclesiastical garments, meaning the Geneva robe, was worn in the extreme heat of Africa during the summer. Communion wine was imported from Italy. And if you didn't have communion wine, that means you couldn't have Holy Communion for some reason if you could not get it. What was one of the ways that meant to be like a mainline church. For this reason, many of the African independent churches was marginalized by the mission church. They were not able to, some of them, to go to mission schools or take part in some of the facilities such as hospitals. Many of the AICs, African independent churches, are located in densely populated, poverty-stricken areas, of the country. They live on less than $2 a day. Healthcare costs is out of the reach of many people. Most self-diagnose themselves as well as self-medicate themselves. Panadol, which is kind of like an aspirin, becomes the thing that is a cure-all for everything that one has. Women living in informal settlements as well as rural areas give birth at home, sometimes in very unsanitary conditions. Water is a premium and usually comes from unclean sources, where people either bathe in the water, wash their clothes in that same water. That same water is used for cooking as well. This means that many people suffer from waterborne diseases. And remember what I said, they have this very unaffordable healthcare systems. Houses are lit by candle, which is a challenge for children in school when the sun goes down. The Organization of African Instituted Churches works with grassroots community that I have just described. A couple of other things that you must know about Africa: 27 of the world's poorest countries are in Sub-Saharan Africa. 1 out of 3 Africans live below the poverty line. 70% of the world's poorest people live in Africa, according to the Brookings Institute. It is in this setting that we work at the Organization of African Instituted Churches, I as a director of the Just Communities program. One of the key components of the Just Communities program is poverty is unacceptable. We say that time and time again, poverty is unacceptable. Nelson Mandela said that overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. It is the protection of the fundamental human rights, the right to dignity and decent life. While poverty persists, there is no true freedom. The three-pronged approach of the work of the OAIC is the resourcefulness of the people. We're always looking to see how are people resourceful. I tend not to talk about poverty when I write stories and if you've read any of my newsletters, but I like to lift up the resourcefulness of the people. Work with the community to magnify their voice. And whatever we do, we must be transformative, and it must be a sustainable program by the community. African Instituted Churches are usually, their infrastructure is, they respond to poverty in all forms of indignity. One of the ways they do this is through the food security. We have a program where we work with farmers throughout the continent of Africa and setting up demonstration farms. The purpose of this is to work with churches and the communities to start farming to combat back food insecurity. This has been quite successful. We see more and more women farming as well as young people taking up farming. It is a means not only to feed their family, but also to generate income. I want to lift up a young lady, her name is Gilder. She's a young woman from Uganda. The OAIC has identified her when she was doing her, what we call O-levels of education. We made her one of the farmer resource people, and because of her excitement of working in this program, she decided to take to do a diploma in meteorology. Sorry. Her decision to follow this career was sparked by the OAIC. Gilda works with young people, training them in the areas of agriculture as entrepreneurship. She works to mobilize farmers and setting up demonstration farms. She also works in developing seed banks that share seeds with the community and other farmers. Now, the type of farming that I'm talking about takes place in rural areas, but yet living in the city, there's limited space. So we also work with churches in introducing farming in a bag. This is a method of farming that people can you need a small space and they can farm within a bag, growing their spinach and other types of vegetables. Another program that we have at the OAIC is teen pregnancy. Girls are victimized through rape, early marriages, in some cases to older men, teachers rape them, or men as they walk to school. Because of poverty, girls are vulnerable and are easy prey to sex trafficking, early marriages, ISIS jihadist brides, as we've heard a lot in the case of Nigeria and other parts of Africa as well. Some of the girls also opt to work in foreign countries in toxic working conditions as housekeepers. And this is for the purpose of improving the wealth of their families. When girls get pregnant, there's a problem because sometimes schools do not allow them in some parts of Africa to go back to school. This means that their future, the future of their child, is dismal. They live in a life of poverty. The Organization of African Instituted Churches has started a program called Daughters of Destiny and Dignity. This is a part of, or this is the approach to deal with teen pregnancy throughout the continent of Africa. The program is working with the whole community to address these challenges. We call this an Ujamaa principle. Ujamaa is a Swahili word which means familyhood, mutual involvement, all involved in the development of the community. We believe that this approach and involvement with everyone in the community, it is a community affair. We involve the parents, the church or religious community, schools, the governments, as well as mentors. We all work together for the good of this young woman or the young girls within one particular family. We also work to improve the economics of the family by giving them chickens, as well as some get a male goat and a female goat. This is for the purpose of, and the young girl is involved in raising the chickens through the help of the agricultural departments in her particular area. The chickens, of course, they have eggs, and they can also sell the young chicks to other families as income generating. Why is this important? Many of the girls drop out of school or don't go to classes because they don't have something as simple as sanitary pads. Or they even, men will offer to buy this for them, and that gets them often involved with men. So this income not only improves the family income, but also helps the girls with buying her books, but also buying her personal care products. One of the other programs that we have is that we teach a course along with St. Paul's University on gender and leadership. This course is taught online with people throughout Africa, men and women from not only African independent churches, but other denominations as well. One of the key components of this program is that everyone in the course has to write a plan of action after they finish the course. This has proven itself to be quite exciting, and people have come up with exciting plans of what they're going to do after they finish the course. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. This is one of the things that we say is that climate change is one of those things that just does not stay in Vegas. What happens in one part of the world affects or has an impact on another part of the world. We say that there is an intersectionality between climate change and poverty. If you look at some of the sustainable development goals, if you're aware of them, there are 17 goals. And throughout the 17 goals, they talk about elimination of poverty, no hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water, etc. I won't go through all 17 of them. But this is directly impacted by climate change. If there's climate change, then you don't have, it's hard to talk about poverty alleviation because when houses are washed out and when crops are gone, people live in poverty. When there is erratic weather patterns, that means people have to sometimes become refugees and go look for better life. So that we cannot just tackle one issue of saying we're going to tackle poverty without looking at the whole, the many areas that takes place. Now, because I work all over the continent of Africa, my examples will be in different countries that we work in the continent of Africa. I want to give you an example of the Congo Basin, which is an amazing, expansive forest that expands over 6 African countries: Cameroon, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and the Republic of Congo, Brazzaville, sorry. It is the most biodiverse in Africa with 10,000 species of plants, It is a home of mammals and reptiles and many other biotic life. It is the home of cultures that can trace back to 20,000 years of forest dwelling. The Congo Basin determines the weather of all of Africa. If their forest is lost or if there's deforestation, then that means that it has an effect on all of Africa. Scientists tells us that the Congo Basin is interconnected to all, I said all, of the world's weather. The impact of deforestation, which is taking place in the Congo Basin, has an effect on the rainfall in, guess where? The Great Lake regions of the USA. What happens in Vegas or what happens in the Congo Basin does not just stay in Africa, but it also has an impact on all of Africa. A country like Guinea-Conakry, which is located in West Africa, is the second largest production of bauxite in the whole world. One would think that this would transmit as a thriving economy, yet this is the opposite. Bauxite, gold, and trees are being exploited and of untold number from countries, leaving a trail of destruction. The OAIC has a tree planting program, but not only tree planting, but we know that we also have to find alternative sources for people who cook. Women cook with using firewood. So we're also involved in planting trees and finding alternative sources for trees, but also climate justice because of all the things that I have talked about. As I conclude, all the programs that I have mentioned are supported by you and your gifts. We greatly appreciate your support. To me, as I work in Kenya, the New York conference has been amazing, supportive to me, and your prayers, I felt them time and time again. But the grants and the giving that you have also supports all the programs that I've talked about. Finally, I want to say a word of appreciation to the New York conference for the theme, Rooted in Love. I hope that this becomes a hashtag. I hope you understand what I mean by that, for the churches in the New York conference. I hope that it's not just a theme used for a few days and then you kind of hang it up, put it on a shelf and forget about it. But I hope that this guides the way that the New York conference lives out their talk. When Kay sent me the theme, my mind went to a tree that we have in Africa that's called the Balboa Tree. It's a huge tree. It has a long lifespan. It's fire resistant bark. It has fire resistant bark, and it is a drought resistant tree. To be rooted in love is like the Balboa Tree. Every part of the tree gives of itself. Its seeds, its leaves, its roots, its flowers, its fruit, pulp, and the bark are all edible. To be a church rooted in love means that even in a world that is going through a drought when it comes to love, a world that is going through a drought when it comes to solidarity and wondering who is our neighbor, a world that is looking inward within itself, we have to be drought resistant. Hashtag rooted in love. Unashamedly thick-skinned and fireproof as we reach out to even those who do not look like us. My friends, hashtag rooted in love. Like the Balboa Tree, a church that gives of itself totally, not only a conference that looks at what's happening in New York and we're only concerned about New York, but a concern has to be about issues that takes place throughout the world, throughout the USA. When states like Michigan is suffering because of the lack of water in some areas of Michigan, that should be our concern. When issues that have taken place in other parts of the world, we have to be curious about what is happening and want to know what is happening and how can we be in solidarity with them in the mission of God. How do we pray for others as we share our prayers that we need as well? Hashtag, this is a church that is rooted in love. For this, I say amen, New York conference. And thank you for listening to me. And I look forward to your questions, as my dear sister Rachel as well. Thank you.
I can't say how much I appreciated what you have said, Phyllis, and what Rachel said, and I feel very inspired and moved by both presentations. I know that you probably have a lot of questions, and if somebody has a question that they'd like to start off with, maybe you could raise your hand.
We have
Okay,
Melva.
Melva.
I apologize for coming in late. Traffic between the kitchen and my computer. For Rachel, we haven't met, and I didn't have the pleasure of being introduced to you and you being introduced to me. My name is Melva Victorino, and I chair the Global Commission. And without our well-able, well-dedicated, and soul-loving members of the commission, our function would not work. You can see that Kay is very active in connecting us with our missionary co-workers. We have Lawrence Gilly, who's always updating us with what's going on in the global ministry, in the world, in our country. And being also a retired missionary himself who served in Africa, he is so knowledgeable with all his connections. So this is really great. We have Judy Toner, who has traveled so many times in Nicaragua and Honduras. So I really admire her, and she is an inspiration for me because she has always been doing this, even despite of the fact that she has back problems. So in pictures, you would see her because she cannot climb the mountains. By herself, they have to put her in a kind of horse so that she could reach, the 2-hour thing. And of course, we have Bob Welcher, who has also been supportive and who is acting as my partner in crime. When I don't have time to do something, he will do it for me. In the middle of the night, he will answer. And I tell you, he was such a great support when we were in Nicaragua, especially when I fell. So we have Chris Hopkins. We have, I don't know if I'm missing anybody, help me.
Ginger Comstock.
Okay, yeah, that's right. And also, we have David Gayesi as our spiritual advisor staff. And Brian is wonderful in connecting us with everything. First of all, I would like to say very enlightening presentations.
So do you have a question, Melva?
PowerPoint,
Did you have a question?
I know she
I
always
want to make
cuts me
sure
down.
everybody gets a chance.
Okay, you can go on. I will.
Okay, thank you for introducing that. Actually, I was gonna have you do that at the end, but that's fine. And but I know there must be some questions.
I have a question kind of for both of the ladies. I was also impressed at what you women are doing for the people in the countries that you serve and as ambassadors for the United States, to let people know that the U.S. really cares about their lives. Now I gotta remember what I was going to ask. Oh, I wondered, I am a member of both UCC and Methodist churches, and I was just wondering, on the part of both of your programs, are other denominations, along with the UCC, involved in supporting you financially? I wanted both.
I can answer the question first. Not necessarily supporting me personally to be in Africa. It's only UCCN disciples. I was connected to the Presbyterian Church, but they pulled out their work in Kenya, so they're no longer working in Kenya. But some of the programs that I've mentioned, besides global ministry support, we do get support from other parts of the world, Denmark, Germany, just different places in the world, but also other organizations within the United States. We get support from particular different programs depending on what we're doing. But who keeps me where I am would be global ministries.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Rachel, any other denominations that are involved?
Yes, the Presbyterian Church has visited prior to COVID and supported. I think that they have an annual drive to support Pringle Home.
Any Methodist support at all?
Well, the United Church in Jamaica and Cayman Islands is actually the coming together of 3 different denominations, including. So I'm not quite sure about formalized connections. The only one I'm really aware of is the Presbyterian, because they have come. And I know that they are engaged at least annually, if not more.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. I want to say also that the World Methodist, I think it, which is located in UK, we've been having dialogue about working together, especially on theological issues and the training of ministers as well. So that's a dialogue that we've just started that we're working on. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone with a question?
Well, I was just wondering if any governmental or business groups located in those countries, do they provide any assistance in terms of training the young people or helping with like a water crisis? I mean, or is the church pretty much the only group doing anything that's helping the people live healthily?
Rachel, were you looking, you were nodding.
I was just looking at Phyllis to see if she wanted to go first. Yes, because the children who come to Pringle and Mount Olivet do so in partnership with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, which is a government organization, there is a lot of engagement. So I would say a solid chunk of our monthly budget comes as a subvention for the children. But that's not the only way that they continue to engage. So we have the regional clinical psychologist who comes every other week to support the girls, because both homes are in light of trauma. So whether the children have witnessed or personally experienced abuse or neglect. And then the Jamaica, since the 70s, their social spending has been limited and restricted through agreements with the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. However, the government, in all of the ways that they are able to support, they are engaged. So community public health comes on a monthly basis to talk about sexual health, nutrition, wellness, self-care, anti-drug information. So we have a lot of engagement there. And then RADA, which is the kind of government branch for agriculture, has engaged quite a bit with both of the homes. So it could be everything from both of the homes have animal husbandry, as well as farm crop and even cooking classes. So once we grow the seedlings, now how do we do that? So I would say I'm probably missing out 4 or 5 other ways, but there is a lot of engagement to the best of the government's ability, considering that for the last 50 years, there have been restrictions on how much the government can spend and invest in light of repayment. And Jamaica is making a lot of progress in the last decade on that, but continues to be one of the 10 most indebted countries in the world to IMF and World Bank.
Phyllis,
I-
do you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
something?
I think in Kenya, it's the engagement is not necessarily monetary, but one of the things that we do with every program that we conduct is that we work along with the government. And I think that that partnership is very important, whether it's talking about teen pregnancy program, where we have the government, we work with government officials in a community, the chief is, which is appointed, a chief of an area, which is appointed by the government to begin to help us to find the most needy families within the community. We try to include the agricultural sector to help us to do the planting or help the families do the planting. That's what I'm talking about, the Ujamaa principle. It's collectively, we're working with families, we're working with everyone who's being a part of this, the health of this young girl. And planting trees, once again, we're working with the forestry department in planting trees and finding out what is the area that's most needy. I think that collaboration is very important so that we're not just going in the community all knowing and just saying and deciding what a community needs, but yet we're working in collaboration, not necessarily monetary, but yet just saying government help us in these particular areas. But at the same time, I think we have a program on social accountability to say to the people on churches, to say that we have to magnify our voices to be able to say that there's certain things that the people should have, clean water, etc. And if the government is not doing it, to be able to say to the government, these are the things that we need. So is the church calling into accountability for services that the community is not receiving to say that they need these services? So it's working in collaboration on one hand, and on the other hand, at the same time, calling them into accountability. Thank you, Linda, for your question.
Another question.
Phyllis, when OAIC goes into a community to work with churches, how do you go about that? Who do you make contact with? How do you get started?
Yeah, our first contact is with African independent churches that's in the area. And we don't ever just go into a community and say we're going to do work. Usually it comes out of the need of the community. And so, but also, interesting enough, we have a lot of mainline. Now, the tables have turned. If I told you the story, I told you the story at the very beginning where they were ostracized by mainline denominations and kind of put aside. But now it's the mainline churches saying to the OAIC, you're doing this much better than I, or African independent churches. Can you help us with this? You know, and that's amazing. I think African independent churches have a wonderful understanding of creation and living harmoniously with the environment. And again, the mainline churches are saying, can you help us with this? So it is working with mainline churches who have invited us in, although our mandate is African independent churches, but also working with African independent churches. Our approach to, let's say, teen pregnancy in one particular area, which is in the western part or the Nyanza part of the country, which is going west, they have said this is a great need, you know, in our community. Tanzania has said this is a great need in our community as well. So because of that, that's how we roll out and start working with the community and in various projects that we work with.
Maybe, go ahead,
I'm sorry. Okay, one other thing. I think it's very important because I think so often when we do mission, we dream up something in some room, someplace, and say this is what Africa needs, and we try to stay away from that dreaming part of it and allow the community, because that's how it can be sustainable and transformative to a community. I often use the example. I don't think Judy or Linda, I could come to your house and say, hey, I think I'm going to come to Linda's house sitting in Africa. I'm going to come to Linda's house and I'm going to redo her kitchen. You know, while that may be welcomed, but you know, that may not be your need. Your need may be something else. And that's the same way we do. We don't dream up something and decide we're going to go to a community and impose that on a community, because the community can't sustain that and they will not sustain it. They will, Africa being as wonderful and welcome as they are, they will welcome you, they'll allow you to come, but you know, in terms of its sustainability, is just not sustainable, and nor will the community embrace it.
Judy, did you have a question?
Well, I just want kind of a tie into what you've already been saying. I wondered if there were any United Nations agencies that either of you work with. You know, how effective is the UN in helping in your areas?
Me, we
You know,
work with the
the
United.
UN gets a lot of criticism, and I just wondered, have they helped you guys?
They don't help us in terms of, we work with the United Nations with the Millennial Development Goals, which now turned into the Sustainable Development Goals. And that connection, I have not gone to any of the meetings on although some church groups have, with regards to environment, the COPE meetings that took place in different parts of the world. But we do work with them, and I work closely, especially with the environmental organization and UNICEF, especially as I go into different African countries to get some of the statistics or data about what is going on in the area, and how do we work with churches. But in terms of financial help, the United Nations work financially with governments, not necessarily individuals. But I collaborate, it's more of collaborative work that we do. Because I'm so passionate about the development goals. And I believe that some of the things that takes place, well, first of all, it was churches that in other organizations that helped to write the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that the translation of those goals have not filtered down to the churches, whether it be in the United States or even in Africa. So I am passionate about making sure that we understand that there are 17 goals. And by 2030, they say that these goals, these problems will be eliminated. Well, that's a real big miracle by 2030 if poverty and hunger and all those things are eliminated in the world, equality with women and others, that would be a miracle. But I do think it is our responsibility to see how that can come into fruition. I believe that these sustainable development goals, everything that I've named and those I have not, are all biblical goals that we should make sure that those, that is our mission as a church, to make sure that these goals are, we work towards in eliminating all the things that they talk about. So yes, in that sense, I help to translate these goals so that every person can understand them in their language. The community can also embrace them. We're also doing this in our theological education to make sure that these goals are not something that are just government goals, but yet we talk about them in our government. We have practical theology to look at the data that the United Nations and other reputable organizations are putting out about poverty, hunger, and all sorts of other things, indignities that people deal with.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question for Rachel. And I noticed in the pictures that the boys' school had a lot better facility than the girls' school, and that you were talking about some of your building needs. And maybe you could talk a little more about that, because who knows, maybe there's some way we could be involved with that. I don't know, but what do you need?
Yeah, the boys' home with the connection of Johann Blake, they're not quite as old, 1967 versus 1922. So their facilities are a little bit fresher. But now they've got this beautiful new fantastic facility that they'll be moving into. They're going to make excellent use and repurpose their older buildings, as I previously mentioned. But Pringle Home, on the other hand, we can't quite reach our full capacity in terms of being able to be a ministry to more girls in need. And with COVID, the need is all the more for children to be in places that are safe. And we know that globally, that's not unique to Jamaica. The statistics are not unique to Jamaica. 1 in 3 girls before they turn 18 will experience some kind of sexualized violence, let alone the other kinds of abuses, whether psychological, emotional, verbal, or neglect. But the building is our challenge in being able to serve our licensed capacity of 36. And that's simple things, whether it's having enough bunk beds, the boarding in the bed not being sufficient to hold a child, as well as our roof. the flooring. Within the last few months, we had to write an incident report because one girl jumped off her bed, very innocently jumped off from the top bed, and right down to her knee was through the flooring.
Wow.
So we have,
You're not talking about a whole new building, you're talking about basic repairs.
yeah, and that unfortunately ends up eating up most of like anything extra that we think, oh, we're going to be able to put on this amazing event to celebrate the girls this month, and then something comes up like the flooring, and we just keep missing these beautiful opportunities to let children be children, let them be celebrated, go on a day trip, just these beautiful little things that would be part of the healing of a girl. We miss those opportunities just because of the needs. We do have a solar system, but it is in disrepair and has been for a number of years. And even that would be able to free up a huge chunk of our budget every month that could then go into those other things. So it almost has this cyclical effect. We do have water catchment and other things, but we're not even like on a water system because the building is so old. So we twice weekly have water trucked in. So it's a beautiful rural community. We're on 40 acres of land. So we have some really wonderful strengths, but the building is our biggest challenge. I think that the renovation of the solar system would be a blessing on a number of ends. And then just those regular day-to-day needs. We've had quite a bit of support lately. So a private business refurbished our kitchen because we were facing not being able to re-license because our kitchen needed so much work. It wasn't getting passed through public health. So that's been taken care of. Somebody has come in and revamped the little girls' dorms. So now they have doors on their bathrooms and shower curtains, and water comes out the top pipe. So this is wonderful. And we're working with somebody, a private group of parishioners who are revamping the girls' bathrooms. So God is at work in meeting this desperate need for us. And just in the nick of time because we were really struggling with licensing. But there are those needs that would allow us, like one whole room needs to be fixed for us to be able to accept girls, for them to have a space for social isolation so that they can come to us, join us. So they have to have their 2 weeks quarantine, but that room is in disrepair. It doesn't even have windows on, and it's hurricane season. So then it spills over, the rain comes and that room gets more ruined as we're waiting for an answer to prayer on how to fix it. So there's a tremendous need and a tremendous opportunity.
Okay, Melva, yes.
What?
Do you raise your hand? Did you want to say something?
But I heard you said something else. Rachel, I'd like to address my question to you. In watching the presentation you did, there are two areas that I really would like to touch on later, the material things that are being faced by Pringle. And the other one that I wanted to address first is the psychological needs of the girls. I saw in that presentation that you have psychologists, doctors who come in to give their help, and they are pro bono, meaning they don't charge anything. This is all for free.
Yes.
How regular do they meet the girls, or do they come to have a session? Is it a continuing process, or it's just once in a while?
That's a fantastic
piggyback
question.
on that, are there staff members in Pringles who are also trained to address the day-to-day situation when a child would be facing a stressful moment or a depressing moment, that they could be addressed right away?
Yeah, these are fantastic questions. So the first question I heard you ask is about the regularly of our partners coming in to support the girls. And then the second question I heard was about the on-site care that the staff team can. So the first question, we have the regional clinical psychologist who is part of the Child Protection and Family Services. So both homes are operated privately by the United Church in Jamaica and Cayman Islands, but in partnership with the government's Child Protection and Family Services. So that regional clinical psychologist serves all of Northeastern region. So that would be like 4 or 5 states. That would be the equivalent for you. She comes usually every other week on a Tuesday evening for a few hours. And during that time, she offers group and individual support. So that is all done in partnership with me because my background is in social work. Prior to me and after me, it would be the director. So the director was called out of retirement. She spent 40 years in the school system and was a guidance counselor. And in Jamaica, guidance counselors take care of pretty much all of the health needs, from your puberty and sexual health talks right through to your mental health care needs, community health, family building and supports. So she has allowed me to take that on, and I coordinate with the regional clinical psychologist and then the mental health teams at the local hospitals. So we have 2 hospitals. One is about 45 minutes away and the other one just about an hour away. And they're the ones that we call child guidance. So it's through the support of child sponsorship that we have the resources to pay the gas, the transportation dollars to get the girls to those clinics. So this is something that's a little bit newer since COVID, to kind of reduce our exposure. And because Pringle is one of the only children's homes across the island who does not have any cases of COVID in staff or children, they've been kind enough to facilitate coming to us, but I don't think that that will last after COVID. So that is usually monthly. So once a month, some of the girls who need the support of licensed psychologists and nurses for prescription are seen once a month, and then bi-weekly appointments for various kinds of talk therapies from the regional clinical psychologists. And then my background is social work and psychology. Those are my undergrads. I have a master's in international development, but I lean onto the psychology and social work degree for the day-to-day. And then we have the director who's trained as a teacher and also guidance counselor. Her master's was from, I forget which university in the United States, but focused on children and youth mental health and disability. And then the Child Protection and Family Services offers regular training for all staff. And that is across all of the children's homes. And that's something that I would say about every 2 or 3 months we have access to. So there's a regular kind of renewal for all of the house mothers, for me and for Mrs. Rose Bryan, the director, to re-engage in what it means to operate from a trauma-informed care practice, effective strategies, best practices. So 2 fantastic questions.
I just also would like to go back to the material aspects, especially the solar system. Helping, sometimes we hear and we can feel that we're so anxious to help. And then we all say, oh, we can buy this here, we can send it to you. But my feeling about that is it easier for people to get funding and send it to you than material things to send to you? I know it's a question that is easy to answer. I could answer it myself. I would like to hear it from you.
Yeah, surprisingly, the answer is actually really, really simple. There are so many benefits to sending the financial resources to countries because it stimulates local economy. whether you're buying the resources locally or paying a service person locally, it stimulates the economy. That's somebody's wage and the meal paid for their family that day. That's a business person who's able to sell a product that they had to import. Jamaica's an island. There are so many tariffs on import that sometimes the truth is it's way cheaper to buy the product overseas. And that's sometimes where you get the from people that you might ask if they would like the support from overseas. And at the end of the day, the need at both of the homes is so great that we're not typically willing to say no, whether it's skipping ropes and soccer balls or something much larger. But at the end of the day, the best practice is always not what people typically want to hear, but sending the resources. It also means that if God works a miracle and answers that prayer before your item reaches us, we don't have to. And the absolute dread of telling somebody who's done all this effort to raise the funds, do the research, get the item and ship it to us, that we now have to. And there's this chaos of letting people down. So the resources are always the best way to go for a number of reasons.
Let me interrupt. We have about 10 minutes left, and I just wondered if anyone had any more questions for Phyllis, because I have a question if nobody else does, which is maybe a little bit related to Melva's question, which is, you know what, well, and this is partly a part of a question that Lawrence sent to me, is what are some important things Christians in the US can learn from AICs, and also what is the best sort of support that churches and Christians in the US can offer for your very important and I mean, it seems so extensive. I can't imagine how you keep your head around it, about how we can be of support to you and the AICs.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I just absolutely love about the AICs, and I think it's a lesson for us in the churches in the United States, is that everything that they do is a part of their spiritual journey. There's no separation per se of saying, okay, I'm going to deal with environment, you know, and that's one compartment, or I'm going to deal with this particular area. It's a part of their general, it's a part of who they are, but also it is a part of, one thing affects the other thing, meaning that they plant trees so that we can have rain, so that the people will have water, so that the air will be breathable for children. It's just everything kind of works in harmony with each other. So I think that harmonious spirituality is a lesson for us in the United States. And also, I think the concept of the Ujamaa concept is not something that we thought about at the OAIC. It is something that communities live by. When we talked about working together, it is everyone in the community working together for the good of that child. In the United States, we tend to be individualized. You know, it's Kay's children, you know, it's Linda's children, it's Lawrence's children. It's not about us, but in Africa, it's about our children. So therefore, I will have someone say, how is our children doing? Our children, it's not like, and you would say, oh my God, you know, is that Phyllis's husband? No, it's not my husband. When he talks about our children, he's collectively saying that this is our children, you know? And so I think that collective understanding of us working together in a community. Imagine if we took that type of concern with members in our congregation, with members in our community. I know we say that's their business, keep it to yourself, you know, let's not get involved in their business. But I think that collective understanding is very important. The support, I think, it goes across many different ways. It's through trees, planting, it's through buying, helping with assisting, getting alternative sources. I talk about a biodigester, I'm sorry, alternative sources for people to use to cook with, because that's very important, a cooking source. I think it's working with the teenagers and goats, and buying goats for the community and to help, and goats and for these families, I'm sorry, it's goats as well as chickens is another way of supporting, especially the teenagers that are the teenage program. So I would name those programs that I think are very much would appreciate any type of help would be good.
Well, thank you very much. And Rachel put on a little chat, something in the chat box about some of the risks of sending things directly, having received $20 worth of vitamins that cost her, what, $50 to tariff or something. So yeah, I think before you send anyone would send anything, you need to know what it's going to cost. I think we are about winding up, and I really want to express appreciation for everybody's participation, and also to tell you that this has been taped or recorded, and that it will be available if you want to go back over it, or you want to tell somebody else about it, or show it to a group in your church, anything you'd like to do. So